Welcome to the Porn Reboot Podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Emezi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode. Brother, today we're going to be talking about ADHD, ADD, your pornography addiction, and impulsivity and compulsivity. Why? Because chances are, if you're a regular listener to the Porn Reboot podcast, then there's a very high chance that your behavior with pornography is related to undiagnosed ADD or ADHD. I have ADHD. It is chronic, and I've learned how to manage it. So I've learned a couple of things over the years, and this is going to be an introductory podcast episode into the topic. But first things first, let's talk about these two words, impulsive and compulsive. And let's try to differentiate between both of them. As you know, I'm very big on differentiating between words, like what is addictive, what is compulsive, what is a slip, what is a relapse. Words have power. Impulsivity is an urgency which is simply driven by a desire to achieve pleasure. Pleasure is your primary need. On the other hand, compulsivity is also an urgent drive, but it is more connected to a need to reduce any painful or distressing emotions that you're experiencing. Impulsive behaviors usually don't involve a lot of thoughts. There's not much reflection. You don't really consider the consequences. On the other hand, when you're compulsive, they are repeated. You know exactly what you're doing when it's compulsive. That's why we call this a compulsive sexual behavior, because you are thinking before you go through that. You don't just find your dick in your hand and you're masturbating with your computer open and you bypassed your filter. It was planned. Despite the need to stop your behavior, that means you know it has a negative impact on your life. So this is one of the reasons why I call men out when they try to act as if their behavior is impulsive, or when a program out there claims that a behavior, they use the word, oh, it's a compulsive sexual behavior. But the way that they actually define it is they define it using impulsive terms. They say, oh, you are absolutely helpless. You don't think about it. You don't think of the consequences. You just do it. No, that's impulsive versus compulsive. Impulsive behaviors, frankly speaking, are really unplanned. Compulsive behaviors are usually repetitive in nature. Impulsive behaviors, again, they show up when there is pleasure or reward. That means you're going to gain something from it, or there's going to be some sort of benefit. Whereas with compulsive behaviors, there usually has to be a threat. There's a threat that brings about distress in your life. Impulsive behaviors, when you engage in them, there's more emotion, there's more aggression, there's more changing of plans at the last minute because you're choosing something with a higher reward. Sometimes there's even more violence, more aggression. On the compulsive end of things, you're more likely to see things like hoarding, more obsessive compulsive issues there. Like you do things obsessively and compulsively because you are trying to avoid a threat repeatedly, a threat that keeps showing up. So now that we've laid this groundwork and kind of explained the differences between impulsive and compulsive, we're going to hone in a little bit more on the impulsive side of things, because individuals with ADHD or ADD who struggle with pornography addiction have a tendency to exhibit more impulsive than compulsive traits. Now, first thing I want you to know is that impulsive, also known as, let's just call them pleasure-seeking traits, they're not a flaw. These are tendencies which can be addressed if you have the right tools. So normal people, this is how normal people work, just in case you're not a normal person. Normies, basically, there is a natural pause between a thought, an urge that arises, and an action they take. So the pause allows for time to actually weigh the consequences. It allows them for time to consider the alternatives and it allows a normal person to make intentional decisions. Now, if you are an impulsive person or you have impulsive traits, then this pause is barely going to register as a pause. It is quite shortened and it is often skipped completely. And this is just due to differences in brain function. Sometimes these differences in brain function are brought about by your repeated pornography use in the first place. So all these brain functions affect your executive processing. That is the parts of your brain which are responsible for things like regulation, planning, and emotional control. And all of these things happen in the prefrontal cortex area of your brain. Prefrontal cortex, as I've spoken about many times, it governs attention, it governs impulses, and it governs decision making. So when you are dealing with ADHD, okay, your prefrontal cortex is not efficient. It makes it so much harder for you to slow down and actually think through a response. The next area we want to talk about outside of your executive processes are your reward system of your brain. And this is responsible for motivation and reinforcements. So the reward system makes certain activities satisfying or worthwhile, and it does encourage repetition. So sometimes it prioritizes immediate reward over long-term goals. This is when you have a broken reward system. You tend to be more impulsive. And when we talk about the reward system, we can't do that without talking about dopamine. And dopamine is the key neurotransmitter here. What it does is that it plays a role as a reward chemical or reward neurochemical. And its main job is to regulate your pleasure and to regulate your motivation. Is that making sense? When we talk about regulating pleasure and regulating motivation, you're probably thinking, bruh, I am not able to regulate either. That's my problem. So when you have lower dopamine levels, then your cerebral cortex has a tendency to start seeking out activities which are going to provide quick hits of reward and excitement. And that, of course, is where pornography addiction and some of your hypersexual behaviors might come into play. So impulsive sexual behavior becomes a way to get immediate relief and immediate stimuli in the moment. And I want to make this clear. This one is to those of you who deep down you're like, oh, it's a moral behavior. It is lust. It is temptation. That's all it is. There is an aspect of morality and there is an aspect of spirituality when it comes to sexual behavior. I believe that. But honestly, your behavior, if you are impulsive or compulsive, has nothing to do with morality. It is simply how the gray matter of your brain has been rewired to seek relief and stimulation in the moment. That's all it is. And if you truly want to free yourself from this behavior, you have to step away from all the morality, all the shame, all of those things, and just understand the science behind it. It's like somebody who's trying to lose weight going like, oh, you're a glutton. It's the sin of greed and gluttony. I do not see any personal trainer out there who's trying to get people to lose weight by talking about the sin of gluttony. But interestingly enough, we have all these recovery coaches who are brandishing Bibles telling you you're going to go to hell for your addiction to lust and temptation. Very interesting. Another issue is the challenge of regulating responses, which are tied closely to the mind's reward and stress system. So when you have ADHD, it becomes challenging to navigate because you have a tendency, myself included, to experience reactions a lot more intensely. Or even if you don't experience them that intensely, you still have a difficulty like returning to a very calm state after you're triggered. So this combination of, as a person with ADHD, experiencing heightened response and then having a brain that really struggles to pause and reflect, it can feel quite overwhelming sometimes. Now, I want to make this clear in this introduction to ADHD and pornography addiction that none of this excuses your harmful behavior. Please, if there's a part of your brain that's going like, oh, it's my ADHD, it's my ADD, please don't do that. What the intention of all of this is to provide a starting point for understanding and growth. It's just a place to begin understanding and reconciling your ADHD or your ADD and your pornography addiction. In fact, we already started that in December. And between December and now, Dr. Howard Rankin and we put together 2 workshops, first of all. And from those 2 workshops and the feedback we got from a few dozen clients, we have designed a 12-week coaching program aptly called ADHD Reboots. Now, there's a workshop attached to it, and I'm going to leave 2 links for you in the description below this particular podcast episode. These links are temporary links that are only available for the week of May. You can still use the link if you're watching this in the future. It's just not going to lead you to the same place. This workshop is 70% off for anybody who registers for it, or anybody, and if you're not even able to attend it, if you can register for it and catch the replay, you can gain access to this 12-week live coaching program with Dr. Rankin and myself as a special guest. What do I mean by special guest? I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a lifelong expert at ADHD. My expertise is with pornography addiction, but I have lived with ADHD for most of my life, and I have built multiple businesses. I have managed teams from 120 people when I ran a direct sales organization to a team of over 30 people now that I run Elevated Recovery, not to mention my numerous businesses and business partnerships. All of this is done without taking any sort of ADHD medication for me to focus. So I have systems in place. And as I was chatting with Dr. Rankin, we came to find out that many of the systems I'm using are things that he already teaches. So what we're going to be doing is over a 12-week period, every week there's going to be group coaching by Dr. Rankin. The beautiful thing is we're making it very ADHD friendly. We'll understand when you become a part of it, or if you choose to. And I will be showing up periodically to actually show my office, give you guys live insights into my lifestyle, what sort of planners I use, how I manage my energy levels, how I set boundaries up in my home and in my office to prevent my impulsive and compulsive tendencies. I think if you've been following me for a while, it's going to give you an insight into a part of my life that might actually make sense, or you might have been completely missing. So I'm actually very excited to be part of this project, particularly because I'm not the expert here. I'm just a supporting character. I'm usually the main guy. So if you are interested in being a part of this, then this week, which is the first week of May, after listening to this, please go to the description, click on the link, and move on from there. As always, you are more than welcome to respond by sending me an email to jkemezi@elevatedrecovery.org with the podcast name in the subject line. I always personally respond to any questions, concerns, and sometimes even have discussions with people who send me emails with the podcast name and number in the subject line. I appreciate you, and I'd love to hear if you want me to continue this series on ADHD and pornography addiction. Thank you. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot Group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.